So a question I had too is that, you talk about the I am and resting in the being and being aware of being aware. Are those all the same practice?
Yes.
Or is there any hierarchy, or are they just...
No, it's all the same.
That's what I thought.
Being aware of being aware, I tend not to use that phrase unless somebody asks me about it now, because if I were to ask you now, all of you know, but if you were to go out onto the street and say to them, are you being aware of being aware? What do you mean, am I? They'd start thinking, what do you mean? But if you were to say to someone, are you aware of simply being? Mm-hmm. Everyone would pause and go, yeah, of course, yes. So again, I haven't worked it out, but as the teaching has evolved over the years, I use the phrase awareness of being much more often now than being aware of being aware. Well, there's something very beautiful about the phrase being aware of being aware when the teaching is formulated in terms of awareness or consciousness rather than being. But recently I've been speaking much more of being. So yes, to answer your question, Ellen, being aware of being aware and aware of being, abiding in the I am, practicing the presence of God, all of these phrases are identical. Mm. Yes.
That's beautiful.
The reason for having different, for the validity for having different pathways is because some words or phrases are evocative, powerful, effective for some people, and some for others. If I speak about the practice of the presence of God, to some people it just takes them straight to God's presence in their heart. But to somebody else it provokes resistance. For them, take the thought I am and allow yourself to be drawn into that to which it refers. That's effective. That for someone else, being aware of the fact of being aware. So they're all different pathways that mean that refer to exactly the same thing, which is not a thing. So yes, just choose, stay with the one that is effective.
Yes. And are they all like at the top of the mountain? You would talk about this, the mountain, or is that stillness?
They are as high as the teaching can get, but they still. Let's say the phrase, be aware of being. All meditation practices, sooner or later, end up in the awareness of being. So the highest instruction for meditation or prayer would be aware of being. However, to whom is that addressed? Does being need to be told to be aware of itself? No, it's like the sun. It is self-aware. It doesn't need to be told. The sun doesn't need to be told to illuminate itself every morning. It just does so by nature. So even the very, very highest teaching, don't meditate, just be. Be aware of being. Even these phrases are predicated on the presumption of separation. They presume the separate self. They presume someone that is not yet being, that needs to be told to be only being. So they're the highest formulation of the teaching for the self that we seem to be. After that, that's the very top of the mountain. After that, when you take off, even you take off the top of the mountain, then there's no more teaching. Because if we start with what is, rather than ending with what is, if we start with what seems to be, we start in the marketplace and we work our way all the way up to the top of the mountain, and we end at the top of the mountain. But then once you've got to the top of the mountain, once you realize all there is infinite being, and then you reason with yourself, well, if that's all there is, why not start there rather than end there? And who would I be apart from infinite being to make its way up the mountain? So then there's no teaching. No teaching is necessary. And that's when we come off off the top of the mountain. But yes, being aware of being aware, practicing the presence of God, abiding in the I am, the awareness of being. This is the highest practice, the practice for which all other practices in all other traditions are a preparation.
Hi, Rupert. So what's compelling me to speak is Ricky's beautiful and courageous description of the feeling of separation and loneliness. And the fact that she spoke that out loud was lovely. And I feel the pain of that so acutely because I have experienced that a lot. I'm sure all of us have experienced that a lot. And I struggle with that this week, but the one thing I did see resting in the I am, is that the life that feeling of separation has is due to the I am that was allowed to flow into it. And that the I am is completely impartial and loving and beautiful and will give itself to any thought, perception,
Exactly.
feeling.
Yes.
And that even though the feeling of contraction is terrible, the I am that is supporting it is totally loving and beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that I can now, having seen that, I can discern and separate out more,
Yes.
Go back to the rest of the pure I am and its beauty and appreciate it in anything, even in the terrible feeling of being separated.
Yes,
it is still
exactly,
there.
Exactly. You express it beautifully. It's what William Blake meant when he said eternity is in love with the productions of time. The I am that shines at the heart even of a deep depression is in love with or utterly intimately one with that experience. It's shining in that experience.
Thank you so much, Rupert. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like there's a divide. There's like an obstruction, not, like this desire to want to live more in that way, but that the safest place and, for me is in my mind. And that's always the place I want to go. That's really where I live. Every decision, for the most part, every way I kind of analyze a situation, the past, the present, the future is filtered through my mind, through my head analytically. And I feel like that's the best way to keep me safe. So I guess my question is, if you could speak to, and there's different reasons for that, so it's not a simplistic answer, I feel like, but if you have anything to say about trying to make that jump from living in one place to...
Okay. I would just recommend that from time to time, when you're at home, not when you're practicing law, but when you're at home, you just do what we do here. Close your eyes and take a thought such as, what is it that is aware of my experience? Or who am I at the deepest level? Or just take the thought, I am. Understand that statement, I am, comes from an experience, and allow yourself to sink into that experience. So all these questions, unlike most questions, unlike all the questions you ask yourself or your clients ask you, which take you into more mind, these questions they're sacred questions. They take you out of the mind. They take you to that which lies behind the mind, the fact of being or being aware. And just get used to going back there and resting there. Your mind doesn't trust that place because there's no content there. It's nothing the mind can do anything with. So the mind is always going to tell you, don't go there. You're wasting your time. More mind. If you want answers, all the answers to your questions, just more mind. That's what your mind's going to be telling you. Just get a accustomed on a regular basis just to sinking down into just the simple fact of being, nothing fancy or extra, just the fact of being, which lies, so to speak, behind or underneath your mind. Just get used to going there and resting there, and your confidence in it, your trust in it will grow. You'll begin to taste its qualities of peace and imperturbability, and in time you'll begin not to go there through effort and asking questions or praying. In time you'll begin to feel that you're drawn into it. You feel the pull when your mind is busy all day long. You'll come home and you'll feel this gravitational pull of your being just to come back to itself. Well, I recommend you just make spaces in your day for just dropping out of your mind. When I use the word heart, I mean being. It's not really in the... Just sink down into your being and just rest there.
So since you've appeared in my life, and I don't know whether you said this or I made it up, but it's a description of all of these old beliefs, stances I've had in life, opinions about people, very old stuff that I've known all my life just seems to arise, and I think it's me, and then I say to myself, no, that's just what I've called me, and I now know it to be thoughts, and I think you've said to just let it go, just kind of rise on out.
Yes.
Without working on it.
Yes.
And that's my experience so far. I just wanted to confirm you said it, not me.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right, Kim. This morning I used the analogy of the physical space in this room and asked you to imagine that the physical space in this room was aware, that it acquired the property of being aware, and then experienced itself. So the aware space was experiencing itself. In order to do that, in order to know itself, it doesn't need to rearrange the furniture, doesn't need to get rid of the people or change the people. So to know ourselves has absolutely nothing to do with the content of our thoughts and feelings, or the extent of our thoughts and feelings, or indeed whether there are thoughts and feelings present or not. It's irrelevant. There may be other reasons for changing your thoughts, but not to know yourself. Only one thing is necessary to know yourself, and that is to go to yourself. Just to go to the simple experience of being. It's the easiest thing to do. It's the simplest, easiest thing to do, just to go to the simple feeling of being. That is all that is required to know yourself. And nothing to do with your thoughts, the quality of your thoughts, the number of your thoughts, or any other experience that you have. Yeah, don't touch your experience.
So why do things start arising?
Because you at a deep level you feel what I've just said, that what you essentially are is not implicated by your thoughts. You no longer have any vested interest in suppressing them.
That's true.
Previously we suppressed them because we felt as an entity we were threatened by them. I'm going to be overwhelmed by my feelings, or what. Now we realize, no, I am the open, empty space of awareness. I'm not implicated by the content of my experience. Therefore, why have an agenda with it? No need to suppress it any longer, because it's no longer dangerous. So all this buried material that we've kept at bay more or less successfully throughout our lives, now it's no longer being kept at bay because it's no longer dangerous. So it starts bubbling up to the surface. And just let it bubble up to the surface, let it stay around, and in time it'll evaporate. And if it doesn't, that's fine. It won't all evaporate, just due to the depth of our conditioning. You've been rehearsing these thoughts for several decades. We all have. They're going to go on. It's not a problem. Some of them will evaporate, but others won't. Doesn't matter.
My last question for the retreat is, when we say the nature of being is peace, happiness, and joy, could that be misinterpreted as other appearances that being might take? For instance, like if sadness or grief arises, that is not being, meaning there's nothing outside of being, right? It might take several appearances, but so I understand the nature of it as being joy and happiness, but could that be misinterpreted that as those other things are not being?
It could be, and you're quite right. It would be a mistake to believe so. You're absolutely right. Everything is an appearance of being, because aware being or consciousness is the only thing, which is of course not a thing, the only reality that is present for anything to be the appearance of. Everything that appears in the movie is an appearance of the screen, because the screen is the only thing there for anything in the movie to be an appearance of. So you're absolutely right. Sorrow, loneliness, anxiety, it's all an appearance of being. When we experience peace or joy or love, we're experiencing being unfiltered through the sense of separation. If the same being is filtered through the sense of separation, it's experienced as sorrow or loneliness. It's still the same being, ultimately, that's being experienced, or that it is experiencing itself. But peace and joy and love, happiness is like the analogy I sometimes use, not a very good analogy in California, better in Oxford, but if you imagine a grey sky, just all grey clouds, and then a little patch of blue. The clouds part, a little patch of blue opens up. Well, if you'd never seen a sky before, you'd think that the natural condition of the sky was grey, and the blue was a blue cloud, a temporary blue appearance. Well, happiness is like the patch of blue sky. It seems to be a feeling that alternates with other feelings, such as sorrow. Some blue clouds, some grey clouds. But it's not like that. Happiness is a parting in the mind. The grey clouds are the mind, thoughts and feelings. And it's true, they're also made of the sky. But when there's a parting of thoughts and feelings, when thoughts and feelings subside, the essential nature of the sky, the blue sky, shines through. It seems to be, at first sight, you could be forgiven for thinking that the experience of happiness was just one more feeling amongst numerous other feelings. It's not. It's the background. It's the nature of being. So the blue is the nature of the sky. The grey is also the sky, but it's a veiling of the essential nature of the sky. So like the blue sky, there's never the absence of the blue sky. There's the veiling of the blue sky, or the shining of the blue sky, but never its absence. So happiness is like that. Peace is like that. Peace is the nature of being when it is not conditioned by thoughts and feelings. It's always there, but it's sometimes veiled by the grey clouds of thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, that's the part I have a question on, meaning the veiling of its essential nature by something else, like a cloud, makes it seem like there is something separate from being.
Exactly.
So that's why I like your screen movie analogy, or it works slightly better for me, because there isn't an outside thing unveiling it. So when
right.
sadness happens, for instance, sadness is being, there's nothing veiling it. That's just, in that instance, the form or shape being is assuming, correct? Like there's nothing
you're
hiding
absolutely
it.
right. And you're right that the screen analogy is more accurate than the sky analogy. It's closer. I use it often because it's one of the very best. A hologram is even better, but we don't yet have holograms, so you have to work too hard but we're all looking at screens all day long, so it's easy. Yes, you're absolutely right. The landscape in the movie doesn't really veil the screen, because all that's there is the screen. There's nothing apart from the screen. So what is it in the landscape that seems to make it veil the screen? It's our belief that the landscape is a landscape. if we believe that if we forget we're watching a movie, if we're so immersed in it that we think the landscape is a real landscape, that belief will seem to veil the screen. We'll think we're seeing a real landscape, and we'll completely lose sight of, or seem to lose sight of, the screen. So you're right, there's no real veiling, and therefore there's no real ignorance.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but that's kind of what I understood last night. I think I was thinking about, okay, like tomorrow the retreat is going to end and I'm going to go home. And especially since we've been talking about the two approaches, Vedanta versus Tantric approach. So I was thinking, okay, let's say, for instance, I go to work tomorrow and I have a difficult conversation with a coworker and some discomfort arises. So I was asking myself, so what are you going to do tomorrow when that happens, right? So I was thinking, am I going to be like sitting in this, abiding in awareness and witnessing it, versus going into the discomfort and embracing what's arising? But then I realized even the thought that says, I'm then embracing this emotion, or I'm then sitting and witnessing it, is just a thought that's completely separate from reality, meaning if that happens tomorrow, the discomfort and the difficult conversation with the coworker is just the appearance that being is taking, but there isn't like an I or a me that then could
you're right.
embrace the emotions or sit back from it and witness it, right?
Well, you say there's just emotion that's arising, and there's no I or me that could separate from that emotion and decide either to be the witness, and so on. So what you're saying is that there's only the emotion. That's like watching a movie saying there's only the landscape. So it's fine if you're seeing the landscape. The Vedantic approach, the going back to witnessing, that's turning off the movie in order to see the screen. When you're with your coworker at work tomorrow having a difficult conversation, you can't turn off the movie. You're right. So then you go into the landscape, but you don't just say it's a landscape. You go deeply into it. And what do you find if you go deeply into the landscape?
That it's just
the
the
screen.
Yeah.
What do you find? You experience this discomfort, this agitation, this irritation, this anger, whatever it is you experience. Rather than say, it's just anger, it's just fear, that would be saying it's just a landscape. It's not just a landscape. So if you feel the emotion and you go deeply into it, feel it fully, without, as you rightly say, without separating yourself from it, but you just feel it fully, you experience what it actually is. What are you going to find there? What is the fear made of?
Nothing.
Peace. Being. No, not nothing. When you investigate the landscape, you don't find nothing, you find the screen. When you go deeply into the fear, you don't find nothing, you find being or awareness. So it's fine. Don't separate yourself from it. Go the way you want to go. The fear is all I'm experiencing now is the fear. But go even more, go right into it, because all that is there is being, as you rightly say. But what is the nature? What is the fundamental nature of being? All that's there in the landscape is the screen. But what is the fundamental nature of the screen? Transparency, emptiness, luminosity. So feel your fear fully, but go even more, feel it even more fully, until all you're experiencing there is being or consciousness, and its innate peace.
Hi Rupert, this is Saqib. So my question is regarding the unity of consciousness, that we all are one. And this feeling sometimes experientially also creates a sense of solitude and loneliness. That when I say that we all are one, then I'm the only one and I'm alone, if I make sense. And that instead of like feeling oneness with everyone, I feel alone. It's like it may be egoistic or nihilistic, but this feeling of oneness creates this idea that I'm the only one, and that's why I'm alone, and that creates a certain sadness.
In this case, the ego has appropriated the understanding and is using it to further its own sense of isolation and separation.
Can you explain that more?
It's not the ego that is alone. It's the one that is alone. The one infinite being that is alone. And that aloneness is experienced in a finite mind as love. Because in love we feel that we are one. In love the two dissolve. That's why love always has either a dissolving or an expanding quality to it. That the ego cannot stand either being dissolved or being expanded. So that this aloneness of the one is felt at a human level as the experience of love. There's just one being, and I and the other are that.